Yes. Okay. Oh my gosh. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And guys, today, I don't even know what to say. We're all so nervous, but this is an exciting and joyful occasion because I'm Alan, as usual. You know me, and you probably know everybody else here as well. Guys, today we have on the channel, we are going to be talking to the author of the incomparable Books of Babel. And guys, I'm not even kidding. This was the very first new book that I read after I joined BookTube last year. It was the very first book that I hadn't read already that I read, picked out by my wife from I'm like, pick one of these. And she picked it. And I have been a huge fan of this series ever since. It is one of my favorite series of all time. I'm so excited. We have Josiah Bancroft joining us today, and also joining us are three of the biggest Senlin super fans that I know. We have Chase, Evie, and Greg, and it's gonna be so exciting. So in just a second, I'm gonna let them introduce themselves before we end up punting it to Josiah Bancroft, and then we're just gonna talk, and we're gonna start with non-spoiler stuff, and eventually we will transition into spoilers. We will only be spoiling in the spoiler section, books 1, 2, and 3. We will only go through Hot Game because Fall of Babel is not out yet. Two of us have read it, but two of us have not. And so we definitely don't want to spoil anything there. So if you're worried about Fall of Babel spoilers, please do not be. But guys, I'm so nervous and I'm so excited. So Chase, introduce yourself very briefly, and then we'll punt it to Evie, then Greg.
Okay. So I'm Chase, and my channel is Thoughts. And Senlin is one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. And this is one of my favorite series of all time. And I'm not just saying that because the author is right here and I just want to look good. I could be doing that, but I'm not. Yeah. I actually love this series so much, and I'm in the progress of rereading it. And I feel so happy that I'm here to do this and be with all you wonderful people and talking about this beautiful masterpiece of a literary achievement.
Yes, so it's gonna be so much fun. I'm with you on Senlin. Thomas Senlin. I gotta save this. So many good characters in here. So many. Thomas Senlin and friggin' Edith Winters are two of my favorite characters in fiction right now. Evie.
So I'm Evie. Alan pulled me off the virtual street. I've never read these books in my life.
That's not true.
All joking aside, depending upon how the Fall of Babel goes, this might be one of my favorite series of all time, maybe my favorite series of all time.
Oh, you're gonna like it.
As of right now, it is definitely a contender, and I've enjoyed every single book to the nth degree for a variety of reasons that I can't even pick a favorite out of the bunch.
Greg.
Yes, I'm Greg. I have a channel where I talk about books. This is perfect because Alan is the perfect person to interview Josiah Bancroft, I think, because when I met Alan, I think his name became like synonymous with Senlin Ascends. Even though I hadn't read the book, I didn't know who Alan was, but like every time I saw Alan, he was talking about it. So eventually I had to read it as well. And I love it as well. So yes.
Right. And Greg is here. Greg is here to comment on. He comments on all these societal commentaries in the.
Yes.
Greg's favorite realm is clearly Pelfia, where everything it is obviously his idea of a model society.
Yes,
right, Greg.
that is definitely true.
Anyway, we will punt it over to Josiah. Thank you so much for being here on this channel today.
I have to say, like, as much as you guys are so kind, generous with your praise about being fans of the books, I'm absolutely a big fan of yours, and I have both enjoyed hearing what you think of my work and other people's works, and I really appreciate your. I know it's a lot of effort and a lot of outlay of time and sometimes expense to put this sort of community together. And I mean, I'm just really grateful and thankful for all of you and all the work that you guys do.
Well, Thank you so much. Like we're huge fans. Like, okay, so let's talk about these books. Like, when I read Senlin, I never read anything like it. I never read anything like it. It felt like to me, I think in my review, to me, it feels like it feels very classical, but I don't really love classical books because I get bogged down in the way it's written, like Dickens and his, like on my Jeopardy game, like last week, I read the first sentence of Oliver Twist. That's an inexcusable first sentence. That is inexcusable that it's that long. Absolutely ridiculous. But this reads like that. Like, I don't know how you write the way you do. I have no idea. But it just felt so, it's just got this whimsical tone, but also is very, very dark in places, which creates this super jarring and like creepy tonal dissonance for me. But the characters
I think like I think the sort of prose comes out of like years of like studying and reading literature and having a lot of the same experiences of like, I kind of like the themes and the characters, but sometimes like the syntax was pretty torturous and tedious. And so, I wanted to write something that was maybe in the same broad category in the sense that you can use large words and not feel self-conscious, but not make it that it feels like you're reading an AP, like an AP practice test. Like you're trying to impress people. So yeah, I mean, it sort of emerged from years of just reading and teaching and writing, of course. So yeah,
I got you. Well, that brings me to okay. First, where did you come up with the idea? And y'all get asked this. Writers, I'm sure you'll get asked this all the time. But this was originally self-published, right? You originally self-published Senlin, correct?
Sure was.
So
that's correct. Yep.
What made you want to write this? Where did the ideas come from, like this particular story? And can you tell us a little bit about like the process of self-publishing and how did you end up getting picked up by Orbit and stuff like that? Like,
that's a lot. That's a lot. Okay, so where did the book come from? We can start there. I had been writing poetry seriously for about a decade before I sat down to write Senlin. And I've been really struggling to get a foot in to the publishing world where poetry is concerned. And I don't know, like, I'm sure you guys all read a lot of poetry and probably buy 3 or 4 poetry books a month. Oh, you actually do read poetry?
Evie does. Yeah. She has a whole book of Keats that she has.
I
write poetry, so I get it.
Well, you do get it because it is an obvious portal to fame and fortune. Like, as soon as you start telling people you're going to be a poet, they're just like, I have to introduce you to my daughter. Like, this is just so wonderful. I've always wanted to.
I mean, obviously, my shirt is made of money, so
Yeah. But no, it's rare that I meet people who read and enjoy poetry. I kind of got disenchanted of the whole process after a while, and I don't know, like if you guys ever get to the point where you can just tolerate so much failure, and then you're like, I just want to fail in a different way. Like, I'm okay with being a miserable failure, but I just want to like feel different for a while. So I left poetry to go fail at self-publishing, and it was very rewarding. It was a good experience. But the story Senlin Ascends came out of reading Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities, which is sort of an imaginary travelogue of fabulous worlds. It's sort of a collection of prose poems. It's very stylistic and lyrical and absurdist and fabulous. And I read it and I thought, like, wow, I can do that. That's no problem. I can definitely do that. I sat down to write that, and I could not do that, lo and behold. And so then I was like reminded, having failed again, of the things I enjoyed when I first started writing. So I went back to my youth when I was like 12, 13 years old and reading fantasy for the first time, but also reading those classic adventure novels of, the 19th century. And so I went back and I read a lot of that stuff I hadn't read in 20 years, so I read the H.G. Wells and Jules Verne and Robert Louis Stevenson, and I was like, wow, these guys are super racist. And so it was really like, when you're 12, you're just reading it, and you're just like, oh, well, cool. So airships, but then you go back and you read it again, you're like, oh my God, this is awful. So Senlin Ascends kind of came out of trying to respond to that horror, but also still, I mean, like, an adventure story is something that I think does like transcend the ages. I mean, like the Odyssey is an adventure story. Like it's something we've always been drawn to. It's just a wonderful sort of genre. I want to redeem some portion of that era, the sort of Victorian era, because I like the technology, even though the sort of cultural, social stuff is important.
Same. Sorry, I'm so excited about Victorian era and technology.
So I mean, so it was sort of this mashup of prose poems written by a master of the form, and then Jules Verne's novels, and a guy who couldn't get a leg up in poetry. So yeah, that's sort of how it started.
What made you decide to have the main character just be some bumpkin teacher from a fishing village out in the country? Like what made you decide to, is that the whole like Jules Verne kind of thing where it's just an everyman?
Well, it's two things. Like first of all, like I've always said, like write what you know, and I'm essentially like kind of closer to Senlin than I would like to admit. But also, like one of the things I just got so tired of reading with all those Victorian adventure novels is this like perfectly competent white male protagonist who just shows up and has all of the facility and tools necessary to solve whatever problem is put before him. And that was literally every story. And they have no complexity, no flaws, often no backstory. They're just the amalgam of all of civilization that's about 6 foot tall and pretty handsome. I was like, I don't want to do that. So, Thomas came out of more of like reflection on my own insecurities and an absolute determination not to produce another one of those protagonists.
And as we know, Tom is not any of those things. He is
tall.
He is tall, and that is it. Poor Tom, man. We're gonna come back to our characters in a second. So, how did you self-publish it? Did you just say, "Okay, cool"? I know that your friend Ian, right, did the cover art.
Yes, yeah, and Ian was there when I was 12 and 13 years old, and like writing my first fantasy stories. He would draw all the illustrations for him. So I've known Ian forever. Like our partnership goes back. I met him when I was 9, so we've been like creating things together for a long time. And I decided to self-publish for the very simple reason that I had no idea what I was doing. I really sat down and thought about it and realized, like, wow, I don't know what I'm doing. So I decided to self-publish. I had heard, because I'd read, I think, one article online from some random website, that it was super duper easy. Like it's just, they're handing out money at the door. And I thought, like, hey, I like money at the door. So that's why I decided to self-publish. But also, like, I did know from the start, this thing that I was coming up with, I knew the market well enough that this was not going to be an easy sell or a thing that a agent or a publisher would just say, oh yeah, great. No, this sounds an unlikable, incompetent protagonist and a confusing narrative. People love this. Yeah, come on. Like, I knew that no one was going to just chomp onto that, and so I thought, and I also don't want to I don't want to compromise. I don't know, like I just had this like stupid artistic vision, and I was like, I'm going to embarrass myself on my own terms. This is going to be a flaming disaster, but it's going to be my disaster. Yeah. And I didn't want to send it to an agent or whoever and them say like, oh, we like it, but what about robots? More robots. Yeah.
What if we made Senlin more attractive and more competent? And,
right. Yeah. What about the abs? The abs region.
Yeah. What if instead of a teacher, he was like an adventurer? What if he was like a bodybuilder?
What if he was like a model? Or like...
And his flaw is that he just doesn't know he's handsome. But don't worry, he'll learn. He'll learn.
Yeah, he just cares too much, works too hard, trains the gym too much. That's ridiculous. So, how did you? Didn't you say one time that when you self-published that your mom would hand out books to strangers at the grocery store? Is that true?
So it was not quite that bad, but not far off. No, I did, like, once I had self-published. I don't know if you've ever pushed. Of course, you all have done this. You push the button to submit and publish something, and then you sit back to watch those views or likes or whatever roll in, and then an hour or two pass by. You're like, I should go make a sandwich. And that's the experience that I had, where I published it, and I was like, I need to reevaluate here, like, because this is not going to be a magical success. And so then I started thinking about like promotional materials. And so I got a bunch of postcards and bookmarks, and those my mother would throw at strangers in the grocery store. You know, and I would just, I put on a chicken suit and went to Comic-Cons and danced in the aisles and try to get some interest in the property. And every time you sold a book, oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. Then not chicken soup. That part was an exaggeration.
Oh, I thought the chicken suit was real. I was like,
no.
I don't understand the connection to Senlin, but
I feel like that's something you'd see in the tower, though, like some dude in a chicken suit, like handing stuff out to you. Like,
oh my gosh,
like that's not out of the realm of possibility.
You know, if I'd had another year, I probably would have gotten there.
That's how they promoted the Everyman's Guide, chicken suits.
Yeah. I had no idea what I was getting into. I had no idea how hard it was, and it was no surprise that I was, a failure at it in the end. So yeah, self-publishing. Don't ask me for advice.
But what happened? Like, but now you Orbit published them. How did that happen? How'd you get to Orbit?
Just blind stinking luck. You know, it's unfair. There are more talented, more hardworking, astute students of self-publishing and publishing and fantasy who have not had half the success that I have, and it's not fair because I just got a lucky break. You know, that's what it was. I submitted the book as a last-ditch effort to Mark Lawrence's self-publishing fantasy blog off. I think it was in the second year that it was running, which is a contest where self-publishers submit their novels and they're judged through this kind of tier system of judges. And eventually one is picked as the winner. I did not get through the round that I was in, so my novel got bumped. But the person who bumped it did write this really compelling, thoughtful, very kind write-up. It was on the site Pornikitch. Jared from Pornikitch wrote this write-up that was moving enough that Mark Lawrence said, "Who is this poor loser who's gotten so close to having a chance but didn't quite make it, didn't quite, get over the hump?" And so he, for whatever reason, on a lark, decided to read Similar Sins and then contacted me directly and said, I love this book. He introduced me to his agent and flogged it relentlessly for several months. And that's sort of what turned the tide. Ridiculous. And what was so stupid is right after I submitted the book to the contest, I deleted all my social media accounts. I swore off the book. I stopped writing the books. I decided to start telling it something else. So I was working on juggling. I was going to get really good at juggling. Yeah.
Wow.
It's really, really, really stupid.
Wow. So that was it. Like, you were just like, I'm submitting this. I'm done. Like, I'm done with this book.
Yeah, it was a last gasp. And I mean, I had written Similar Sins. I think I had sold a total of 200 copies, maybe 300 copies after 2-3 years. And I had written Arm of the Sphinx. I had sold 50 copies after 2 years. And I was sort of writing The Hod King. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. This was fun at the start, but I just, this is, again, it became that I don't mind failing, but I just want novelty in failure. Let's pick up the accordion. Let's do something different.
Wow. I am so glad that Mark Lawrence read it then. I have 200 copies of Senlin Ascends in my book. Just me. Greg, what won that year? Was that Orconomics, Greg? Did Orconomics Senlin Ascends that year?
No,
I think that's a later year.
Okay.
It was Jonathan French's Grey Bastards.
I haven't read that, and
that's right. I get all the years of Winners confused, but I believe that was right. And the guy whose book, not mine, out is Phil Tucker, and we do a podcast together. So I got to make a friend. I contacted him and I was like, "Hey, congratulations! We got to talking."
Yeah. That's really awesome. And that is such a cool story, and I am so glad that it got picked up. Or none of us here might have read it. Oh my gosh, it's so good. I know, I forgot to say at the beginning, everybody here watching, the fourth book of the Fall of Babel is coming out in November. So make sure that you pre-order that. And I'm going to say that again at the end, but the fourth book is coming out in November. It's
the end. Yeah.
It's good stuff. I did not know that story. Oh my gosh, I'm sweating hearing that story. Almost
I would say, you said Ian, he did the covers. he was one of those guys who just believed in it from the start. And so, Mark Lawrence, I owe this great debt to, but Ian Leno, who did the art, since I was a kid, has just believed in me. And, it's like a testament to, I think, all of us who have friends and family who believe in the little things we're working on that seem kind of like silly to the outside world. I mean, like, thank God for those people,
Yeah, that's awesome. And how did you convince Orbit to let you keep your cover art? Because usually don't publishers be like, yeah, I don't care. Guess what this? Look, it's a clown on the front. No clowns in the book. You got a clown on the front. Enjoy.
I am lucky that they accepted the pitch. I'm lucky that they've been really great. So, I mean, a lot of it, again, is not anything that I've done. I think that they felt compelled by the quality of the art. And I think it speaks for itself. And it seems kind of like, in the same way that Senlin was weird, the art is sort of weird, but fittingly so. And it's a great story, like there's not a lot of people who show up in a publishing like, they're like, look at this kid sells 9. We wore jams together, and that's not common. So
that's fantastic. The cover art, like, the cover art's stunning. Like, it just stands out. Like, you cannot miss that. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know like what was inside the castle like for most of the books until I finished them, like except for Fall of Babel. I knew Fall of Babel was on the cover of Fall of Babel, but I didn't realize it was on the cover of Hod King till I was like 3/4 of the way through Hod King. I'm like, oh, that's what's on the front. I'm not super observant, sadly. So let us talk about the books and kind of what our favorite parts of these books are, because you were talking about Tom, and that Tom is like the not Victorian hero who's good at everything and is super handsome. And we also, wanted to make sure we asked, is that why? Because you have some really like strong female characters in this book. These are some of the best female characters I've read in fantasy, and I think everybody here would agree with that. Like, they are fantastic. Was that intentional to also, subvert the Victorian, women, where it's like, oh, please save me from I'm chained to a rock and the sea monster Cetus is gonna eat me.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely it was intentional. Like I wanted to, when I first started working on this, I was like, this is going to be a takedown to patriarchy, which so naive. But my hope was that I would write characters that were different than what people were used to, and I mean, I don't know if I've succeeded on every page, but that was sort of the hope, to write women with agency, with their own stories, their own flaws and strengths. And I think that's like one of the things is sometimes patronizing about male writers writing women, is that they can end up kind of turning them into these statuesque embodiments of virtue. And I didn't want that, because that just seems like a different kind of insult, so it's a lot of what I wanted to do was, and this is kind of crazy, but just sort of pretend they're people, so that's sort of what I did, and it worked out, I guess, so
that is. And I'm gonna let Evie gush about Edith in a second, even though like Edith is I love Edith so much, but I know Evie's love for Edith. So, but Tom, what I love about these characters is that they seem, more than many other fantasy protagonists, that they are real people in these extraordinary situations. Edith was, a farmer, and then the mistreated wife of a different farmer. And Senlin is just some schmuck headmaster who thinks he knows everything, like every teacher does when you're hanging around teenagers all day. You do know more than them, for sure. And I just love that they behave like real people. One of the most just glass shattering moments for me was in Sphinx, when one of the characters overhears two of the other characters kind of talking, being like, this character is, can we really count on them? And, they're kind of disparaging, saying some disparaging things. And where in normal fantasy, that person is now that's all they've heard. They're going to take it, and there's going to be this manufactured conflict, and it's going to create tension among the cast, even though if they had if they were mature or just stayed another second and heard what came after it, they would behave like real people and be like, oh, well, I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, I do that. You're right. Like I see that. And I just couldn't believe it because it's so rare to see people react the way real people would react. Most people don't like the, oh, I can't believe they said that about me, so I'm never going to talk to them again ever. And it's just like, but that happens so much in books. And it was just so, it's just one of these moments that was just so realistic that they're just written so well. And Tom's, one of the things that a lot of people say when they're having difficulty connecting to Tom, because they always report to me, like Alan, Tom's an idiot. Like, I'm like, okay, like, I don't care. Like, why is he doing this? I'm like, what would you do? They're like, why didn't they just meet back at the train station? I'm like, what would you do? Like, don't act like you'd be any better. Every dang one of us would do the same freaking thing, especially if we believe the nonsense that's written in this stupid guide that doesn't have any bearing on reality. He just is so, he's such a rube.
He is. I think, like, I understand people's frustration because, I mean, a lot of the genre of fantasy, not all of it, obviously, it's a very diverse genre, but there's this element of wish fulfillment and this desire for competency. And since you have like a bird's eye view of a problem, it's a lot easier to feel competent about that problem in the same way that, like, that's why everyone loves the talk shows, because these two people come out and express some problem and you, the arbiter in your living room, feel like, oh, I know the answer. And it's the same sort of wish fulfillment, superiority, and that's entertaining and it's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But the way that I created these characters was originally out of a sense of like, you have to be vulnerable as a writer. You have to be honest about your own flaws and insecurities and your own relationships and the things that like work and don't work in your own relationship. It requires a lot of self-reflection to not write what I would consider sort of like the high school drama, strain of characters, which again, nothing wrong with that. Yeah. That's fun, so it was just a different tact. And when people say like, I hated the main character and couldn't get past that, I say, fair enough. It's fair enough.
Yeah. It was just so different. And I, as a teacher, with a wife who is a piano teacher, I was sold immediately. So I get it when people say the same thing to me. I'm like, yeah, you're not a teacher whose wife is a piano teacher who likes social gatherings where I would much rather be reading instead of doing that. So I was doomed to like this book to start with. It was my destiny. And Thomas Senlin is just so, and we'll talk more when we get into the spoilers. Evie, would you like to express your feelings about one of the other characters, perhaps?
Yeah, just from the first book, I fell in love with all of the female characters more than Senlin, and I feel like they're all very distinct and very familiar, yet complex, and I just love them. And Edith, especially throughout the entire series up to this point. We'll see how she ends up, but I've connected with her like I've not been able to connect with, or I've connected with her the way that I've connected with any other character, more than any other character. And just her struggles and her insecurities about her identity, about her abilities, and especially, I don't know, not going to get into spoilers, but I guess whenever we get into spoilers, I'll talk about that, about a scene that broke me. I just thank you for these characters. Like, it's amazing. And I didn't think that I was a character-driven reader until I read Senlin Ascends. And I think I messaged you, Alan, and I was like, I think I'm a character-driven reader now.
It was like, the characters they're just fantastic. Again, Edith is one of my favorite characters in fiction right now. She may be my favorite female character in fantasy for sure. She's just so good. So good.
And I will say that also, like, more than the characters named on the page, the thing that I think one of the things that most stands out to me is even the smallest character has just some complexity to it. Specifically, I'm thinking about the character in the parlor who, when Senlin is getting ready to go up to the baths, Senlin realizes that, hey, this guy's an actor, and the guy's like, I'm believable. This is great. Maybe I'll get like a promotion. And I'm like, wow, that just blew me away.
That scene is where everyone messages me and is like, okay, I'm sold now. Here we go. It's the end of the parlor is where everyone says, okay, all right, I'm in it. Let's do it.
That's great. That's really great. I'm glad. And I think that like one of the things that I wanted to do with Edith is that I think I'm really lucky that I'm surrounded by so many women who have been influential and formative to my character. Like I'm just lucky to have grown up around so many people and been educated by so many women who've taught me so much. But one of the things I've just learned from writing and from being around, in the community is that like strength is not always impervious. And I've never really like been attracted to characters whose strength is purely stoic, like that they are untouched by the things that happen to them, that they must always just be resilient in the sense of like without suffering. And so I wanted Edith to be one of these characters who is very strong, but not impervious, and I think that to me is what is her marker of humanity, like this, but what feels with humanity. So whenever I meet a fan of Edith, I'm like very, very excited because in the series she's also, and especially in the final book, the character I'm probably most proud of.
Yeah. In the final book, Edith, I think, may have
overtaken. No spoilers.
It's not a spoiler. I'm just saying that Edith is.
She's
awesome.
not in it. She's not in it.
You already know she's awesome. Greg, what are your thoughts, character-wise? Who's your favorite, Greg?
Okay, so my favorite character is Valletta, which is an uncommon answer.
Yes.
No, but it's interesting hearing you talk about like some of your inspirations for writing the book and writing the characters and Senlin and Edith, and how you're almost saying that you're trying to subvert the tropes and you're almost trying to like make a counterculture thing in terms of some of this, or like some of the things you think about when you write. And Valletta is the character that is young enough to kind of like point out the things in the culture that are like not ideal, but everyone else has kind of just taken, and it's like a way of life for them. It's like a fish in water. They're like, what water? But then Valletta's like the one who questions society in like profound ways that only a child can question society. So that's why I like Valletta.
That's awesome. That's great. When I was like working with Valletta, like as a character originally, I was like, the only thing I know about this character from the outset is that she will have no romantic interest. Like, I was like, that is like not what she's going to do at all. Zero romantic interest. And I did want her to be, especially with like Senlin and Arm of the Sphinx, the one who just calls him out on stuff and is able just to like incisively say like, this is unreasonable, you're being silly, like that doesn't make sense. And as a teacher, and my past was as a teacher, and Alan understands this. One of the things that I really grew to appreciate about meeting the constant cresting new generation of persons is they bring in just the complete lack of cynicism, and they speak the naked truth sometimes unexpectedly, and it can be transformative. I mean, it's sometimes you have to listen, and it's always challenging just to drown out that because you want to be the expert in the room. But I always benefited from the wisdom of the people who are carrying the future forward.
Did you teach high school?
No, I taught community college for 10 years.
Gotcha. What did you teach? Poetry?
Literature, poetry, grammar, writing, scribbling. I was in the writing center, so I spent a lot of time saying like, all right, look, this is a gerund. I know it doesn't look like a gerund, but it's a gerund.
I teach gerunds and gerundives in my Latin class. I teach English grammar in Latin class.
Hey, there you go. You know.
What you're saying about, like, I tell my teenagers all the time, I'm like, they are so interesting because everything is a crisis. Everything. They are so passionate because everything is the biggest deal. Oh my gosh, my boyfriend of 3 days broke up with me. My life is over. I love him. And it's just like they have these big emotions, and they still have all their dreams that haven't quite been squashed by the uncaring, unfeeling grindstone that is the American system. You know what I mean? Like, they haven't had their, they haven't found out that no one wants to buy poetry. You know what I mean? Like they still have all of their, yeah, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, yes. And teenagers are just so interesting. Like they're just so interesting.
They are. I think like one of the greatest challenges as a teacher that I mean is a challenge is not to let your cynicism infect them. Because it's so tempting just to be the person who's like, oh, well, just wait 10 years till you get a gut and a mortgage.
Yeah.
You won't feel anything anymore. Like,
Yeah.
What a terrible thing to say to a young person. Like, rebel.
As a teenager, I am absolutely just loving this conversation right now.
I'm saying, you're right. You have to not be like,
I'm 19 and I'm barely holding on here. Like,
you're doing great.
Yeah, you have to try when they get excited about something. You have to be like, well, that's dumb. Like, that's stupid. Like, I just like, yeah, okay. Even though I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so dumb. I'm just like, oh yeah, let's do this weird TikTok dance that you're doing because at least they're excited about it. So Chase, without mentioning a certain character that does not come in until the second book, we'll talk about that particular one. I know, in spoilers. Thoughts? What's your favorite character? What do you think of the character work here? If you can form your words without passing out.
I've been trying to, this whole time, I've been trying to listen and also figure out what I'm going to say in a way that actually makes sense. So here goes. I don't have a favorite character. All of them are my favorite characters. No matter what position I am in, like personally, I can find something different to appreciate about each character. I mean, with Adam, who obviously I can't say too much about right now, his fortitude and the way that he is absolutely selfless and is willing to defend his family at the expense of others is admirable, even though it does, cause problems. And I think that something that about Adam, which is, it's hard for me to say because I started out not liking Adam, but like you understand that he has a reason. He has many reasons. I mean, and I think that Adam is a very interesting character, especially the later books, what he does. Anyway, Edith is extremely interesting because I find her identity crisis very much so like compelling, and not really knowing who you are and what you're here to do, and being told you're here for one thing and someone attempting to give you purpose, and making it seem like you owe them. And her whole arc is just gorgeous. And Valletta, at first I also didn't like her a ton. I hope I'm not like insulting you too much right now. No,
Don't worry, Chase. Any insult you may give, I'll top it with, because I'll give strong opinions about how I felt to start with.
No, but like, especially in the Hod King, what Greg was saying about Valletta just questioning the legitimacy of Pelfian society and these asinine rules and way of living is just really interesting. And I feel like everyone else in the crew is dealing with like trying to figure out where they fit in the society, but Valletta doesn't care about that. She's just like this whole society sucks. Like, it doesn't, I don't want to fit into it. This is ridiculous. And so I love her for that. And obviously we have the main man, Thomas Senlin, who,
That's my boy.
yes, if I had to pick a favorite right now under pressure in front of one of the coolest authors ever, I would say that he's my favorite.
Strong choice. Strong choice.
Yeah. So I feel that I connect with him on a very deep level. And obviously my wife is not a piano teacher, so I don't have that like Alan does. But there's just something about Senlin, his unwillingness to break, and like his fortitude, and he is a formidable character. Nothing will break him because he is just so determined not to change and not to succumb to the evil that is in the world. And he is his own. Like, he belongs to nobody else. Like, he is nobody else's, servant. He's Thomas Senlin, and I just really admire the courage it takes for him to just do the things that he does and still be able to sleep at night. Because, I mean, he changes so much, even like over the course of the series, not to mention the first book. Like, and the fact that at the end of the day, he's still recognizable as Thomas Senlin is amazing to me. And so many of us, like, over the courses of our lives, like, we probably couldn't recognize ourselves, if we looked at ourselves in the past. But Tom, he knows who he is, and, he's not going to give up. And I love that about him.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really great.
Yeah. We can talk more about that in a second. We got to transition to spoilers to do it, though.
Okay.
Is there you guys have any other non-spoiler thoughts of how we can tell people to read these books? Does anybody have any? Like, if you
read the series.
Yeah.
That's
if you're not reading the series, like,
what are you doing?
You should be reading them. It's so good. It's so different. And so there's just, each book has something else that is it's great writing, fantastic characters.
All right, I'm going to try my hand at it without like mentioning the story, because if you're already sold on the story, then let me give you some extra incentives. 4 books, that's not a commitment.
That's right.
That's not very much of a commitment. I mean, it's not like I'm asking you to read A Song of Ice and Fire or Wheel of Time. 5 unfinished.
That's true.
Yeah. And they're relatively cheap. I mean, it's not much of a financial commitment. So if you want to save money, if you're a broke college student like me.
What is the sales pitch, Chase?
Then,
no, I like it.
Then you can get them relatively
it's
cheap.
not a commitment, and it's cheap. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a really good series. And, the 4th book is about to come out. It's about to be fully finished.
It's complete.
And so many people have reservations about starting unfinished series. The series, the final book comes out in a little over a month. I mean, what more reason could you need aside from the absolute beauty that is the story?
Yeah. If you like character work, if you like excellent characters, guys, read these books. Like, the character work is fantastic. The book 1 is kind of an exploration of Senlin, but the character work that is started in book 1, book 2, all the other characters get to shine, and it just keeps improving in book 3, and then in book 4. It's absolutely fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, you people who like to write, like you guys who are aspiring writers, masterclass in how to write. Like, read this man's prose. Just read his sentences, and just the musicality of the just the words on the page, even the freaking epigraphs. I had 2 people send me epigraphs from Hodking today, just being the one about the parrot, about how the parrots gossip now. because they used to be like the alarm bells or whatever they used to be, but now they gossip. It's good stuff. It's just so good. It's so good. Evie, you got a pitch?
So if anyone knows me as a reader, knows that I am a sucker for narrative structure and thematic elements in books, and this has both. Like I mentioned before, every single book is so distinct. There's something to love about each of them and something different. And just there's so much thematic content to really digest and think over, and it's not one of those books that is preachy. It feels weird saying that with you here, but it's not preachy. It gives you something to think about and to kind of question about yourself as a reader, as yourself, question yourself as a person, and to question your world and your society around you. And I just think it's great.
I mean, I'm sorry to cut in, but like, it's not an understatement for me to say that this series changed my life.
Nice. This is.
I hope the better. Like, I mean, if you like went out and got some crumb, that's not on me. That's
freaking crumb. Greg.
Sales pitch, yeah. So the epigraphs, it's Josiah. I felt like this was a good outlet for your poetry, the epigraphs. So I'm glad you got to keep kind of writing poetry. And as far as the sale pitch goes, poetry, as we've established earlier, sells very well. So yeah, you should buy it if you like poetry.
Well said.
Absolutely fantastic.
I mean, the prose is absolutely just lyrical. I love it.
100%. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've not read the books, go buy them, go read them. Currently, we are going to talk about spoilers, and we're going to demand answers for things that occur that we don't like. We have him hostage. So please come back after you've read them. This will be spoilers through books 1 through 3. We will not be talking about Fall of Babel. So if you have not read Fall of Babel, obviously, that's fine. So don't worry. We're not going to spoil anything there. Chase and I are going to be very careful not to do so. So
there's so much to hate in that book. I'm going to get so many letters.
I hope not. I loved Fall of Babel, but that's a conversation for a different time. What I want to expand on what Chase said about Thomas Senlin. That is my favorite thing about Senlin. In fantasy, my top characters, my favorite characters are ones that have kind of this sense of right and wrong, this like really overdeveloped sense of justice. Like my favorite characters in fantasy, Senlin, Samuel Vimes of the Discworld City Watch, Kelsier from Mistborn, and Falkio from the Greatcoats. All like they're all just like, no, this is wrong. Like, how do I stand up for this? They all have that element. And Senlin, the tower feels like the amalgamation of human ingenuity and human innovation, the of what the normal Victorian hero is supposed to be. That's the tower. But it's just a collection of human vice. And everyone in that tower, I remember reading this and I'm like, Christina, everyone in this tower is awful. Like, just awful. Like, I would hate it here. And then you have Senlin, who at first refuses to accept that that's the case. And then after accepting that, he's like, oh, okay, that sucks. Rather than allowing it to change him, he does adapt because he knows he's going to get killed. Like, he's done if he doesn't adapt. But he refuses to alter that just central core of like, I'm going to do what I have to do to survive, but there's a line that I'm not going to cross. Like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. Like, I'm going to have to get my hands a little dirty, like working for, Fingal and everything. But it's all for, I'm not going to let it change me because Moria at the end, right? And I just love that because I just feel so, when the gang's all together, when the whole group is together, Senlin just feels to me like just because all of these people have given up. Irene has given up. She's not ever going to be anything but Fingal's, thug. Adam has long given up being a decent human being. He's just like, whatever, I just need to keep Valletta from being prostituted out. Valletta is like, well, this is what it is. And then Edith, she's definitely given up. I have I can't be the farmer and I'm here and now I'm missing an arm and all this stuff. And then Senlin shows them, not through any fault of his own, just by his pure stubbornness, that the tower doesn't have to change you, that you can be who you are before the tower ruined you. And I love that so much. And I think, because I've had people ask, like, why would anyone follow Senlin? He's someone called him gormless and feckless, and which are two of my favorite words now. And I'm just like, they follow him because he represents what they could be, what life without the tower is. And I thank you so much for writing such a cool character who's also just like that. He's not good at any of his other jobs. He's a sucky pirate. He's a sucky thug. He's a sucky all of these things because he can't do what he has to do to really be good at them. Because like when he pulls over the guy with the books and on the airship, and he's just like, yeah, well, can you just give us your stuff? Like, we don't want to. he just won't be a pirate. He just half does everything. He tries to be a pirate, but Senlin's version of it. Anyway, like I don't know what I'm trying to ask. I think I'm just gushing. Like, the
thing about Senlin is that I felt, especially towards the end of Almost Sphinx, that he was becoming heroic, and I did not want him to be heroic. And I think that for me, like one of the things with the tower that I want people to take away from it is that, yeah, it's filled with despicable humans, just in the same way that the Everyman's Guide is filled with despicable lies. But the thing that's so frustrating about life, like real life, that I see all the time, is that it's not purely so. And so what is infuriating about the Everyman's Guide for me is that sometimes there is, wrapped in all these deceits, a helpful nugget, a thing that you have to personally analyze, synthesize, and find some meaning from. And in the same vein, there are people and institutions and moments in the tower that are not purely hateful, corrupt, and evil. It's not like, Lord of the Rings, where it was just like, there's a tower of hate, and from the tower of hate came the children of hate, and they all hated all across the country, and then there was hate. It's not that simple. And Senlin, as much as I've seen, I think he grips upon his principles and tries. He loses them because the tower, doesn't let you get away with being a hero. And I think that the most letters that I have received probably were from the ending of Fall of the Sphinx, when people said, "This ruins everything." And I was like, well, that's kind of the point, this is a person who is striving but is not angelic. This is not a Christ figure. This is somebody who's making like mistakes. This is somebody who is striving but still, in moments of trial, cowardly and self pitying. And I think that that's what's interesting, for me. So yeah, it's great that, like, I think Tom has principles. They're not perfect, and he makes a lot of mistakes.
Yes, that's another thing that makes him fascinating, is that he is still just bad at things. And you say cowardly. he's such a coward because he's a guy. Like, what's he gonna do? He doesn't all of a sudden have superpowers. He's just a teacher from a fishing village. He can lecture people, and
he does.
He does.
he does enjoy that. Yes.
Yeah. He always does just like squirrel it out. And
he is smarter than a lot of these people, so I'm sure that he got a lot of enjoyment out of doing that on occasion.
And Greg, I'm going to bounce it to you so you can talk about, something that you really enjoy in it. But Valletta, the reason that I don't like Valletta is because I find myself saying when I read books, stick to the plan. What are you doing? Follow the plan. And Valletta is the character who doesn't do that. And I'm just like, what are you, Valletta? Stick to the plan. And she's like, I don't want to be on the ship. I'm going to go blow something up somewhere. It's just like, Valletta, stay on the boat.
That makes her fun, though.
He's a little quirky.
Yeah. Well, Senlin didn't stick to the plan either, so there's that.
Look, Senlin did his best. Senlin is trying his best. can't help it.
Well, I think the thing about Valletta, I mean, she has her own principles. She has her own like guiding light. I'm sorry, Greg.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Yeah, I was actually going to ask about Senlin because, well, first I wanted to know if you've played Dungeons and Dragons. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry. Like nodding on a podcast is not helpful. Yes, I have.
Okay.
But only really after finishing the hot game or close to finishing the hot game. Okay. So later, I was introduced it later in life.
Okay. Yeah. So you've done the impossible task with Senlin of making a lawful good rogue because he's like undercover and he's like, he becomes a pirate at one point and he like the path life gives him is to become a rogue. And it's funny because that's like a joke among my friends. Like, can you be a lawful good rogue who has to like steal stuff? And I think Senlin's like the best example of that.
I had never thought of that. That's really interesting.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Yeah, I started playing with some fantasy authors 3 or 4 years ago, and like we release our sessions as a podcast because we just have fun with it. And I play an obnoxious bard, basically, who pontificates a lot and has a pot belly. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, I didn't get into. I was never introduced to Dungeons and Dragons until I was 39 or something. And like, wait.
That's amazing because when I read the Hod King, and obviously there was no influence there, but when you first introduced what the Hod King was, I immediately thought of this thing from D&D that was big in second edition. I'm not sure it's big anymore, but it was this thing called the Apparatus of Qualish, which is this giant robotic crab.
Wait! Don't spoil any like campaigns. I've only done.
No. I'm not. It's a magic item. It's like an artifact. It's not in any campaign. A DM can use it anywhere. Like I would never spoil a campaign ever. No. It's just a magic item. Like there's this giant robotic crab that your DM has to put it in your game. Yeah, and they crawl in and you control like the party. One controls the like some of the legs, the others control the legs, and you roll dice.
Really?
To, like, seriously?
Oh man, I thought I came up with that.
It's a giant robotic crab, and I was like, "Holy crap!" I'm like, "Has Josiah Bancroft played D&D with the Apparatus of Qualish?" But anyway, I was just like, I could immediately picture the Hod King because of that kind of similarity. It was awesome. I'm not even sure that you have the Apparatus of Qualish in any like modern D&D. It was like, back in the 90s that it was there. Maybe it's still there, but yeah.
Well, I have to go dig. This is gonna be fun to discover. I appreciate the kids. It's cool.
Seriously.
That's
Eva,
a massive coincidence.
Eva, your thoughts?
So the thing that I like, going again back to Senlin, is in the first book, because we kind of talked about Irene, but not a lot, is that regardless of what happens to Senlin or around him, he wants to find Maria, and he will do almost anything to find her, but at the same time, he's not going to take advantage of people. Specifically with Irene, he's like, oh, I can use her, I can teach her to read because I can get this information, but he can also give her the freedom to, hey, realize that I'm being taken advantage of. I'm not just this muscle. I have this education and this thing that is more than what the world is giving me. And I don't know, that makes sense. But I will say that in regards to Valletta, I also did not like her initially, but the thing that I really like about all of the characters is just the duality of them, because you can look at Valletta as being just reckless and young and just not caring about what others are doing for her, but at the same time she's fearless and she is blunt to the point that she will call everybody out. And I think she's more than anyone the embodiment of that duality of characters. So
that's really interesting. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And with like Iron, I think like I wanted her to like, I had like a immediate sort of affection for her just because I don't know, like she was one of those characters who showed up and insisted on herself and had this sort of like an entire like history that came with her. And it was early on in like the drafting of the second book where I was like, I've got to like do justice by her. Like I've got to like really make this give her the story that she deserves. And I hope I did that with the final book. Like I definitely I think I was happy with I don't know. We'll see what you think when you get to it, but yeah, she was very important to me. She's a very important character.
I am nervous to see how the serum will change her. So,
Valletta, yeah. Well,
yeah.
You should be.
When do you start it, Evie? Do you get it Monday? Is that when it's coming?
According to USPS, as long as USPS doesn't screw anything up.
Starting Monday. Starting Monday. Nice. Exciting.
But actually, I think that kind of segues to the Red Hand. I did not expect to, specifically in the Hodgkin, I did not expect to like the Red Hand.
Reddleman.
I have an absolute affection for that character. So.
It's so much fun. I mean, like from the first book, I did not think that like I was going to pull a redemption arc with him. And, I'm glad that like there's something there that you find laudable or enjoyable.
I love Reddleman, but obviously I can't say too much, regarding
Reddleman is did you intend to like make when he's fighting on the ship at the end of Hodking so creepy with his weird lobotomizing with his needle? Were you just like, what does he fight with? You know what? A brain needle.
I was like, what's the grossest thing? Yeah. I mean, when I first wrote Senlin and the first Wakeman that I was going to introduce was going to be Reddleman. And I went through a lot of different options. Like I had some characters who were a lot more sort of noble, but fallen. And his was the weirdest option I came up with. And I thought, this is going to like present problems later in the narrative. But I went with it because it's fun to make problems for yourself later in writing books. In retrospect, halfway through, I hated myself, but we got there in the end. It was okay.
Is that kind of your writing style? You don't think too far ahead, and you said you didn't think of it like a redemption arc for him, and then like as you started book 2, you had to think of like an arc for Irene and stuff.
It's so funny. It's like I've been asked like several times, like, are you a gardener or you're a pantser?
Yeah.
Like seat of the pants, or do you have like outlines? And I'm a garbage man. I just do it all, and none of it like works. And there's a lot of drafts. There's a lot of like dead limbs that I cut off, and there's some weird gray liquid that amasses around the bottom. I mean, it's a mess. I would never recommend my process for creativity. I knew like where I had to go and what I wanted those pieces to look like. But that's the thing that's like crazy with these characters. They do show up, and then you have to choose as a writer. Like, okay, do I serve these characters in a way that I think is like going to be interesting and that's a dumb word, but kind of respectful of the characters I've presented, or do I just like push them through the cheese grater of the plot because we got somewhere to go? And I that's the constant back and forth. Almost always, I just chose the character and just trusted that while I had these sort of hoops that we had to get through eventually, that they would find some way through it. And like now that I have like played Dungeons and Dragons, I know I'm not going to ever be a DM because I'm not smart enough, but I know DMs. I'm like, oh, this is sort of what they do. There's like that sort of, you have these places you're pushing the character, not pushing, but guiding the characters, and you're hoping when they get there, they don't just burn the castle down. So yeah.
Yeah, well, you have to keep the skeleton of your campaign if you're a DM so that it doesn't, because if you try to plan no. Or if you're sly, you just have an encounter that could literally work no matter where they go. And so no matter where they pick to go, it's like, oh, it's this encounter I planned. Oh, look at that. So it just depends. Jace,
But
what were you
I'm
gonna say? Sorry.
still learning the art form. It is absolutely an art form.
Yeah, it's so much fun though.
I was just gonna say, you know, you and I have talked about your writing style before, and I asked you pretty much that same question a little while ago. I don't know if you remember, but you told me that it was when I was reading Fall of Babel initially, and you said that it was just like a compilation of like things that you took time to write, and then there was like bits of just kind of really tiny things here and there, like little notes here and there, and you kind of put all that together, and that there was this one thing in book 4 that obviously we can't talk about, but you said that you had envisioned this like toward the beginning of your whole process, which is super interesting to me, and it honestly makes me feel a little bit more secure about my own writing style, because I do the same thing. I'm a mess. So it's really interesting to hear some like an approach to writing that is like pretty unconventional, and you know, you wouldn't think that you'd be able to like make all that work, but you, with the risk of not sounding like a super fan, you're a genius. And so the fact that you're able to like
Now I have a new ringtone. Oh my god!
That's right.
Well, I will add that it's I imagine that writing in any form is difficult. I'm not a writer, and I imagine the more aspects you bring into it, the more difficult it is, and that the product seems so seamless is a testament to everything, like to the books, to your writing, to the craft. So
there's not been a point like reading the books where I'm like, okay, this feels out of place, or this feels tonally like inconsistent. I feel like a lot of people have the criticism of the first book that it feels like tonally dissonant and whatever. And I'm like, exactly. But I love that. Like, that's the whole point. That's what I love about it. And so
again, the prose, the way you write, when like Redelman is stabbing people in the brain, like the way you write during that final shipboarding where everyone, just like where Iran tears up Eigengrau, and like it
was very cathartic for all my anger issues. I'll just put it that way.
But it just adds something in that it's not written in, you know, like this grim, this dark, like, oh, in a world where the sun is out and everybody bleeds blood and their tattoos are made of the blood of their enemies. It's just like, oh, and today
I want to read that. That sounds great.
From his shoulder, and he beat him to death with it. It's all very very happy. It's so good. It's so good.
I do feel like with like those moments, like I've never been like really comfortable with like gore or like explicit things, and so I'm like, we have to be clear and we have to move on. So let's be clear. The brain was stirred with the needle, but there's no reason to linger. We don't have to say it was a squelchy sort of like macaroni and cheese noise. You just move on. Don't hang out there. And you know, I don't know. But I do want to say, like, when it comes to writing, I think there's a lot that is just because of how the internet is structured right now. It's very easy to establish camps and say this is how you write, or you write like this. And it's easy then for other people to write articles saying I am this or I'm that, you know. And it's very popular, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I do think it like misrepresents the creative process to a lot of young writers, and even like just like established writers, where they feel like, oh, am I strange that I work this way? No, I think that the creative process for a lot of people is messy. I think it is hard to describe to the people in a consistent way because it changes from day to day. And sometimes when you look back, those connections that you made, those kind of leaps that you intuited, seem mystical or strange or arbitrary and by chance. And so I think that like I hope that if you feel encouraged by anything I've said about my process, you don't feel like that is in any way a dominant impression of what a process should be. I think that there is no right way to create something, that, you know, you just begin to explore, and then you begin to trust your own inner critic, and that is how you can, some people, build a creative process they're happy with. So yeah. I'm happy about that.
I just think that that's like everything you just said is extremely interesting because it kind of questions the integrity of the concept of duality when it comes to writing. Like you mentioned the whole like pants or gardener, and it's like in reality nothing is really that black and white. And you know, some people are more on one side or the other, but they're never the pure distillation of either thing. And the fact that like you make it very clear that you are not either one of those things and that you exist in sort of this middle ground, even if you want to call it that, it's not even just that, but that is very interesting to me because it breaks the concept of duality like in half.
Well, I think part of it is if you're going to sell a book or, you know, have a video on writing, you can't really have a book that's like, yeah, you know, you can really just kind of do it. There's not really, you know, it's not really any way to do it. You just, you know, trust your own, like, I think part of it is just like our need to, you know, separate, categorize things like this is this and this.
There's a
step
comforting
1, step 2, step 3,
exactly.
and then we're done.
Like
that's what people are looking for.
Yeah, there's comfort in hearing like, oh, if you can be this or you can be this, so you choose, you know, like there's comfort in that. And I think that that's also something I really love about the series, to like kind of not really do a good job of segueing. The fact that there's not really any one kind of reality in this series for all the different characters. Like every character sees things very differently. I just love the way that that's portrayed throughout the whole series.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, like Adam is, you know, I think he has it in his mind that he's protecting Valletta, but then you come to Valletta's perspective and she's like, kind of protecting him. Like, I know what's going on and I'm making sure that
I'll go ahead and even though I'm a Senlin super fan, I'm not. Adam has betrayed me. How dare you betray my boy Tom? Not once, but twice. He's on my list.
Is it betrayal when you are trying to protect your loved ones?
So,
no.
I don't even need to hear the rest of the question. Yes, it is. It's still betrayal. Senlin was not going to... You're going to let your friend be murdered on the off chance it's going to protect your sister? Senlin's trying to help your sister. Evie, do not betray me in the tower. Evie, don't do it.
No, I like Adam is like one of these characters that like if it had another character like Senlin, the story would not have worked. We needed somebody who was not principled in the way that like Senlin was trying to be principled to kind of have a counterpoint. And I think that like hopefully for people, the Fall of Babel will be a turning point in just how they think of Adam. Like maybe not redeem him, but just be like, oh, that's a different way of thinking about him as a character. Oh, not that's okay. I am totally fine with like writing books where people don't like characters, because I go to the grocery store and don't like people just randomly for no good reason, not even part of my plot. Just like, why are you like standing from the pickle so long? I want a pickle jar, you know. So I think that, you know,
like why
I get it.
Why are you blocking my way with your cart for over a minute? Like, what's up with that?
I have
like four choices. Pick one.
Exactly. I have Fall of Babel Adam thoughts, but it's not out yet.
Yeah, me too.
My thoughts on Adam are books 1 through 3 Adam thoughts.
And really it's just books 1 and 2 because there's no Adam 3.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Back to the gore thing that you were talking about, gore. My wife does not like violence in anything. My wife, I am a very like loud and just like, I'm a very intense person. I don't mean to be. I'm just very excited.
Really, Alan? I didn't know.
I've been told this, but my wife is the most like kind and gentle. She says hello, by the way. She is so sad that she's teaching piano now instead of being able to talk to you. But she wanted to tell you that she loves your books so much. Nice. But she hates violence. Like she can't read most of the fantasy books that I read, but because the way that you write, like for some reason, it's not like, even though tons of people die in these books, and you know that ending scene of Hod King where the airship like attack, but she's able to do it because of the way it's written, because you don't belabor the gore and the brain matter and all that stuff. So she really appreciated that she was able to
good.
Yeah,
well, I have to like revise and read these things over and over again, and like by the fourth time I'm like, man, I never want to read that sentence again. Like that's just way too visceral and gory, so I think I just I PG it for myself.
Yeah. Speaking of revising, do you in your how's your I mean, obviously you're not going to say I hate my editor, you're not going to say that, but do you have a good relationship with your editor? How much do they make you change when you submit wait, it was self-published to start with, but now that you're with Orbit, how does that work as far as editing is concerned?
It's a great question. My editor Bradley and Emily, they're UK and US, have been very helpful. They've been wonderful. When Senlin and On the Sphinx were republished, they were essentially unchanged except for some. Obviously, my copy editing skills are not great, so there were some copy editing changes and a couple of small continuity things. But one of the reasons I was so Bradley and Emily both really appreciated the story that was, and they didn't want to go and retcon things and change things. So they said, let's just keep it as it is, which I really appreciated, because they could have obviously been like, hey, let's tighten up this arc, more robots, how about some abs? And they didn't. They just believed it, and they pushed it forward. We came to the Han King. That was the first sort of editorial experience I had with them. They were very positive and helpful. They did they recommended cuts. I think I ended up cutting about 40 or 50 pages from the Han King, which was already long. Some of those pages I would like to one day see published, like sort of John Turturro's backstory was lost in the edits for the Han King, which I completely agreed with because the story was just getting too long. But there's more lore that was sort of that had to be axed to make the streamline things.
Please release it on your website.
I love through.
Yeah, if Brandon Sanderson can release his first version of The Way of Kings, which is over 1,000 pages, you can release the 50 pages.
Well, I'm working on that. I hope to have an announcement in a couple of months.
I will gladly pay money for that.
So
how much money will you accept for
that? Whatever it costs, I'll buy it.
I don't. I've read it several times. I think it wasn't the work itself didn't have, it's just like you're trying to write a novel, and a novel is sort of this pillar of integrity. And so then we got to the Fall of Babel, and the Fall of Babel, that was a little more sprawling, and so we had to cut about 100 pages from that. And they were very light-handed. They would come back and say so this is too long, and we need to cut some. Can you cut from this section? Can you cut from this section? So I cut about 50 pages from the Adam section. I cut about 30 pages from the second section, and then 20 pages from the last section. But I want to recapture some of those too, because there's this whole Byron side quest that got cut for absolutely the right reasons. Totally agreed with it. I did it myself. I saw it off the limb, but I still think it has just entertainment value.
And you're definitely going to release that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thing.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So, but their input has been absolutely positive.
That's awesome. That is really, really cool. That when that they don't want to change the vision as is because Senlin is such prime, he's just a prime guy to be American cinema. He would be.
What about a mustache?
100%.
In
the show, Chris Hemsworth would play him in the show, and
obviously
he'd have Mjolnir somehow and have a gun.
It'd be a much shorter story. Yes.
Yeah. They would add some part where he has to jump off the tower too.
Yes.
He would have like a jetpack or something.
He would just ride to the top of the tower, and Mario would be there. That's what would happen.
So
one and done.
One of my favorite things when Greg talks about this series is Greg notices a lot of he sees thematic elements and kind of social commentary in there. Greg, do you want to address it? You don't have to. I just you talk about these in your reviews, and I do not. So Why is Pelfia your favorite, your ideal ringtone?
I like it because it in a lot of ways it's almost like the most like real life in or like kind of our society, and especially the way they interact with art. It feels like everything's commodified, even when like Valletta is like dunking on the governor for like being ridiculous. It's like, look at the papers are like, look at this interesting character that we have to talk about. And yeah, that's I don't have a question, but yes.
There was like a point with Pelfia, I was like, I want to like think about celebrity and the nature of celebrity and the nature of like the commodification of just personality, and how like, I don't want to say like social media writ large, but there's a lot of that in there where the consumable becomes people's lives, which I think is an interesting question, but also problematic in lots of ways. So I mean, I'm glad you picked up on that. That's really cool.
Evie, were you gonna add to that?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I did have a question about Pelfia. Is it supposed to be a representation of Philadelphia? Because that's what I thought of, because Pelfia, Philadelphia, I made a stretch.
No, it's not, and it was I have to like go back and look at my notes. It was originally, I'm so dumb. I wrote this when I was living in Wilmington, Delaware, and it was based off of I originally called it like Telfia, based off the Book of Kells, and then I changed it to Delphia, based off of Delaware. This is really stupid. Look, I was being honest, and then like somehow like it morphed into Pelfia before I had moved to Philadelphia. But it's reasonable that people go like, "Is that what it is?" I'm like, "Sure." Because like, the answer is a lot. It's even dumber. Like,
isn't it just named after Duke Pell? Isn't it named after Duke Pell? Like, isn't that who it is?
Well, yeah, but like that's the first book was the Pells. So yeah, I brought the Pells, but I could have called it Pellangia or something. But the Pells were eventually like originally like based off of the Kells, because I lived in Ireland and I had this. And there's all these Easter eggs about my own life, and so like things that like I just experienced, I just shoved in there. So there'll be like a room number that is my office number. That sort of stuff shows up all the time. So when people say like, "Was this a nod to Philadelphia?" I'm like, no, but it would have been better if it was. So yeah.
Easter eggs.
So I'm assuming then you also have a hatred for orange, because I developed a hatred for orange after the Hod game.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Well, it's worse than purple, so I'll say that.
we literally have a running battle. We have a running battle in my Discord of the orange haters and the purple haters. Like, is orange or purple better? Yeah.
I mean, my ring light is purple, so this hurts a little bit. So
no, the cover of the Hod King is purple because I love purple. I love.
I could help everybody out and turn these lights purple like really quick.
Yeah, do it. Let's make that happen.
In Hod King, Pelfia is summed up for me at the scene they're at the theater where the prince finally, first of all, Xenia is the most annoying, pitiable, kind of sympathetic. Like, she reminds me, all I can think of is the blonde girl from Princess and the Frog, Charlotte. Where she's like, I don't ever get anything I want, but when the prince is finally like, shut up, like none of this is ever going to happen. You need to just deal with your status and all that crap. And then that Earl, who she's been rebuffing this entire section, all of a sudden she realizes that that's literally the best she's going to do. And it's just so sickening. And so I just pity her, because now all of a sudden, like, oh, and he's like, and you have that line of like, his lips were like two snails crawling across a garden wall. Mm-hmm. And it's just, and I just like, this city is so gross. What a horrible, what a horrible place to live. Why did you do such horrible things?
A place is only the depiction or the assessment of a place is because of the people in it. So we haven't really talked about the tower as a whole, but like I know that a lot of people think of the tower as like, oh, destroying people, bringing out the worst in people, but it's really the people that make the tower the way it is, however good or bad it is.
I mean, the tower is an extremely interesting thought experiment because it's not even just evil or vanity. It's like each ringdom is a very interesting, like, separate society from all the others. And each of them, to me, represent a different extreme, like, of humanity, like a different aspect. Like, of course, Pelfia is, you know, very vain, is a very vain society.
Boo on Pelfia.
But like, yeah, but you don't really see that in like the basement or, you know, the baths. Like, it's very different. And, you know, the baths is much more so about like comfort and, you know, relaxation, but Pelfia is not about that at all. And they're all.
I was just gonna say, I would actually argue that, for me at least, that the baths are more about apathy.
Yeah,
Like,
I thought it was like sloth, like one of the deadly sins, sloth, like the doldrums from Phantom Toll Booth, where you're just like. But yeah, Chase, like, I mean,
I will never disagree with anyone's interpretation of these different ringdoms. Like, that's great. I mean, and you're right. You're all right. I mean, absolutely. The challenge I gave myself with the Fall of Babel is I decided like I had to like write one ringdom that was not despicable. From like soup to nuts, like I something in the middle was like maybe okay. And I tried. We'll see what people think about that in the end. But I did try to have one non-despicable.
I do have one question that everyone demands answer to. Why would you kill Ferdinand? Why would you do that? And why do we find out that he's a doggy? Like, that is, I do not know. My wife
sadism.
cried so much when Ferdinand died.
No, I for me, honestly, and maybe this is not a great answer. Like, I thought Ferdinand was the purest innocence. It was just this sort of vessel of pure goodness and frolicking innocence. And
so you thought you could crush it.
Yeah,
so you just want to hurt everybody.
I know, and I've gotten a lot of letters about it.
Really?
Yeah.
I was on a video doing reading sprints, and while I was reading that scene, and I just started bawling, and immediately after I turned off the video and I went and hugged my dog, and I'm like, it's okay.
And God knows, like, I want all the best for all of my characters. So I'm so sorry for people who haven't read The Fall of Babel and the ones who must die.
That's so obvious.
Don't make me think about it. That's not what I want to be thinking about right now.
Does anyone else have a question that they can ask? I have to run to the restroom real quick, so please ask a question and continue this discussion. Be right back.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Greg.
Okay. Yeah. In terms of like the different ringdoms, I feel like there's a somewhat different power structure in all of them, and like a different way to like control the population to help the people in power get what they want. Is that like it almost feels like that's how you structured them when you were writing them? Is that the case or not?
Yeah, absolutely. And then like there's the sort of native structures on the granular level of the people who are the actors within those ringdoms, and then there's the sort of political machinations that surround them in the ringdoms, and then there's this greater structure, this sort of engineered superstructure, which all is putting different pressures upon them, and so each of them, I think, in some way believe they're in control. And they're like, they're the puppeteer, and each of them are subtly or not so subtly wrong, and that is on purpose. I'll let people read that as they will, but I would say yes, it's on purpose.
I love how open to interpretation so many things in this series are, and I love that we can sit here and talk to you about this, and you can say, "Oh, that's a great interpretation." And not like directly answer the question with a specific plot point like, answering our questions specifically. I
Well,
like
it-
that.
yeah, I mean, I was
Yeah.
actually thinking about this but before, like, because I'm like Mary Catherine Gallagher sweating, like trying to like, oh, gotta practice like conversation like points or whatever. But I was thinking about it, and like, yeah, we could talk about authorial intent and stuff like that, but really, books are it's a combination, it's a meeting of author and reader, and I think it's just it's a beautiful, like, I don't know, conversation.
That is what I want people to take from this. And somebody who like taught literature for years, I was determined from the start of teaching that I would not present literature as a riddle that I had the answer to, and then the students would have to slowly tease it out of me until I finally revealed it before the exams. I think that's garbage, because I think literature, or not even literature, but just stories are about like the opportunity to commune, self-reflect, ponder, and authorial intent. Who cares? Like, these stories are off my desk. They're someone else's. People will read them in ways that I'm like, ooh, I wish they hadn't read it that way. And they'll read it in ways I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. And they'll read it in ways that are helpful for them and hopefully helpful for others. And that's all great. Because like, as a writer, I hope we're all trying to do, as a creator of any kind, is not to supply answers, but to supply a meeting place, like a platform for discussion and discovery and all that sort of stuff. Because the point is not me. Yeah. The point is it's the reader. They're the most important portion of this equation.
Like, speaking for myself, I don't want all the answers. I would like some answers, because obviously you can't really have a full, like, a resolved plot without some answers. I don't want all the answers though. And so for me, this experience has been about you offering me something, like, and that's what I take from it. It may not be what you wanted to give me or that kind of thing, but that's what I took from it. And that's what I really value about reading this entire series, is that I've not really experienced anything like that with any other book or series. Yeah. And there's so many things that I've taken and incorporated into my own, like, thought processes and the way that I look at things, like, based off of themes and characters from this series.
That's awesome. That's great. And the thing that's so wonderful is now you're going to go and create your own things, and this whole contagion of ideas continues. And that's the point. It's not to be like, and you're welcome for the answer, class dismissed, everyone go home, it's been solved. Like, that's not the point of writing or stories or any of this stuff. It's to fan on the flames.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's actually really refreshing to hear. There's a lot of like discussions in the ether about authorial intent and all that other stuff. But I know that everyone who's read this book gets something else out of it. For me, I just like watching these people try to survive and do the right thing. And you create these moments where, like, in a lot of fantasy, there's one right thing to do, and that, you are on this side and whatever. But we've had debates about things a lot in these books, not the least of which is the realistic portrayal of the kiss between Senlin and Edith is one of the most controversial things in this series, at least in my Discord. Like, there are camps. It's so well written. Like, it is completely understandable why it would happen, because it's been over a year or nearly a year since he's seen Maria. Him and Edith are in close proximity. They're close. They're friends. They've been through. We've all seen Speed with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock, where the intense situation breeds those kind of feelings. So you understand why it happened.
That's the touchstone. Speed. I love it.
Sorry. That's always.
I'm genuinely, it's fun. Love it.
Everything revolves around Keanu Reeves. It's okay.
I don't know what to tell you. It's just,
in that situation, I would kiss Keanu. I mean, like, come on, it's Keanu Reeves.
So I completely understand why it happens, but people's reaction to it is completely divided. Like, I can't, Senlin, I can't believe you. And people are like, no, I like it. And then like, but he's married. And it's like, it's just so well handled, because most people that I know don't like love triangles in books. I actually don't know anybody who does. And most people leading up to this are like even my wife's like, there better not be anything with him and Edith. There better not be anything with him and Edith. There better not be. And then it happened, and she's like, nah. But she's like, I mean, I get it. It's like, and it's just so well handled. Like you just write like real people in real situations. That's exactly how I can, see it happening with real people in those situations. Like, did you intend for that to happen from the beginning, like them to have that weird little moment?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think, there were certain scenes that I wrote or drafted or sketched at the beginning, and there's two of them in the final book, and there's one in the Hod King, and there's the one in all those things. Yeah. So, I mean, it's yeah, I know. It's tough. I know. And there's anyone who says I was once in a very friendly way accosted by someone in a train station bathroom about that scene. And I turned around. I was very surprised to see him, and it was like, "You," and I was like, "We're in a bathroom. It's SEPTA." But he had complaints, and legitimately so. But part of it is, again, like removing that sort of like heroic element from Senlin's character. But then, like, I think for him, that makes him face a lot of the deceit that he has allowed to sort of dwell within his own heart about his relationship with Maria, and then he has to confront that the next two books, and that. So it's not. I don't think it's. I hope it's not just this cheap thing. For me, it's part of his character arc and his arc with Maria. And then when it all ends up, or where it ends up, I hope that people understand why we went there. But I mean, when people are like, "Now this is a love triangle," I'm just reading Twilight. I was like, I guess it's sort of like Twilight.
Not even kind of. I think it's handled. I think it's handled super well. It doesn't seem like some kind of one-off thing. What do you, Evie?
I was just going to say that, I mean, can you even call it a love triangle at that point? Because from the beginning, Senlin has this, I know we briefly talked about, putting women on pedestals. Like, Senlin kind of puts his wife on a pedestal. And he has this an ideal of her that is challenged. He doesn't know who she is after a year of being in the tower. And then when they finally meet again, she's not the same person that she was before. And she does things that he doesn't expect. And I think there's, as much as Senlin Ascends is about Thomas Senlin ascending, it's also about Maria Senlin ascending the tower and what they each have to do to survive and make difficult choices.
I think that's
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially about Maria and just seeing what you said specifically about putting her on a pedestal. I think readers do that too. I know I did.
I definitely did.
Yeah, well, we only get her from Senlin's perspective, so it's easy to do that.
I feel like it's by design, and I think that that's actually genius. That's another.
Another ringtone.
Yeah, we're talking about you.
It's just another example of like the really beautiful and well-constructed subversion of expectations. Is you're expecting this whole time that Maria is going to be a certain thing, and then you get to, like, based on what little you've seen, and then you get to the Arm of the Sphinx, and you're like, wait a minute, how's that possible? Then the first 150 pages of Hod King, you're like, wait a minute, this is not what I thought it would be. This is not like Maria. I mean, but the thing is, we don't even really know Maria at that point. And that's when you really have to be empathetic and consider the situation she's gone through. And you're like, well, maybe I have put her on a pedestal. And then that's when you really break through with her character. That's when you really connect to her, is when you realize that your expectations have been based off one little shred, and that you don't know her as well as you think you do. I'm sorry.
I like all this. I know. The thing about a book that's so exciting is the readers make it better. And I think all you like in your thoughts, your conversation on these pieces is making the book better.
You gotta tell us that we're wrong
scared.
about some things. Come on.
No, he just said that our interpretation is fine. He's not going to tell us we're wrong about that.
I was
I'm just kidding.
I was so scared you guys thought I was an idiot when you were quiet. I was like, did I say something wrong?
I was. How much hate mail have you gotten for the end of Arm of the Sphinx? Those last 3 pages.
So spoilers, obviously, like that is probably number 1. Number 2 is Ferdinand. Number 3 is the Prince and Valletta. In the dressing room, people didn't like that.
I cried. I
got 2 letters.
I was like, there's no way he just shot Valletta in the head. I was like, no.
Yeah, I'm really on a very precarious cliffhanger at the end of book 3.
Yeah, and then freaking Iron and her. I love the the relationships between these characters are just so well written. Not just the romantic one with all the romantic stuff, but like just their friendship or their companionship, and Iron like being kind of like a surrogate mother to Valletta, and and now having Anne, who was literally a surrogate mother to like a bunch of rich Pelfians, and just Iron's. There was something, as Evie said earlier, something incredibly cathartic when Iren said, you know what? I'm tired of acting like these people. It's time to bust out some Fingal tactics. And like, boom, dead prince. Boom, boom, making her way to the dock. Eigenground, done. Boom, boom.
I feel like if that had not transpired, everyone would have felt cheated. Like,
was so good. Iron killing him.
I love Iron and Anne. They're so perfect.
Yeah, they're like Iron and Valletta's friendship. Like, I think is my favorite part of Almost Sphinx, and then like the way it develops in the last 2 books, I really like. But we'll see what readers think. My opinion is secondary. But I had fun with it. I enjoyed it.
There's one thing there's something glaring that we haven't talked about. So where did the ideas of the more bizarre parts, like where did the idea of the Sphinx, and then when did you think of, what I'm going to have the Sphinx have? A robot deer manservant who wears a waistcoat and really doesn't like people spilling things on the rug. Like, where did that come from? Byron is the best.
Yeah. Byron is the best. And that's the only thing that I will say definitively about the series. Byron is the best. He deserves a spinoff. He should have an HBO show.
Absolutely.
I had a lot of fun with him.
Not wrong.
And he was absolutely, in the entire time that I wrote the overarching sort of plot line of the story, had no role, did not appear. I had no idea who he was. The Sphinx comes from the Fritz Lang classic futurist 1920s movie Metropolis, which features a character called the Sphinx. And if you haven't seen the movie, go watch it, and then you'd be like, Josiah was borrowing heavily from this movie, because I was. It's free on YouTube. It is a masterpiece. Fritz Lang, Metropolis.
I love that movie, and you saying that, like, a light went off in my brain, and I just like made a huge connection, and like thinking about the like gorgeous aesthetic of that movie. It just makes sense to me now.
I stole a lot of stuff. Byron literally from the best. But then Byron, so I had the Sphinx in mind from the beginning. So it's like Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino, The Plague, and then Metropolis were sort of the touchstones for the start of this whole thing. Byron, I literally was writing a scene. I was like, well, the door's going to have to open. Somebody has to greet them. Don't want to be the Sphinx. Got to be somebody. Who's it going to be? I was like, Dear Man. I was like, that's a dumb idea. Dear Man, here we go. he would go, "Dear man," and then he just showed up, and I started writing his stuff, and it was really easy. And I think it's because there's that little voice in the back of my head that sounds like him all the time. I don't know if you guys like have a secret Byron, and so I just like, yeah, go ahead and talk, and I just like wrote it down. You know, it's a combination of growing up in the South and having somebody like hit your hand with rulers while you're sitting at the table trying to hold the fish fork and the egg spoon, all that stuff the right way, and then just like a snarky British person. So, yeah.
Does Byron insult? Do you find Byron insulting your writing as you're writing things? Like, does he?
Yeah, absolutely. It is fun to write in his voice. It's like Orrin Robinson and Byron are my two patron saints of snark for the series, and I could write reams of stuff in their voices. It's just so much fun.
That's
Orrin
amazing.
Robinson is hilarious to me.
Yeah, you should.
Like what you've written with him feels like an outlet to be to seem like you're pretentious, but like it's really you're having a lot of fun, like using the language that he uses in the way that he uses it to convey like a different type of humor that's like unconventional. And I really love anything with Orrin Robinson.
I'm so glad. Yeah, he's fun to write because he's sort of like he's unconsciously self-effacing. Like he doesn't know that he's self-effacing, but I think he is. And it's that's the voice that accompanies me, like standing in line at the DMV. You know, you're just like you can't speak to the idiots around you, but you're just sort of like internally seething, and that's the sort of voices on loop.
That's Orrin Robinson is. Yeah, please give us World of Babel side character novellas / short stories, and we will buy them. We'll buy all of them. We'll buy 200 copies each. Just like
I will. Even if you don't publish one, I will personally commission one. I will.
Yes, we will.
I'll give you all my money.
Write us a Byron poem in the style of Keats's Hyperion.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Oh, to a nightingale, please. Oh, to a nightingale.
What? What Hyperion?
Oh. I don't know. Oh, to Nightingale may win.
So, who do you who do you find is the who's the easiest to write and who's the most difficult to write when you're writing all your characters?
The easiest is probably Byron, just because I don't have to do a lot of drafts. He just shows up and says terrible things or pretentiously snarky things and
wonderful things, in my opinion.
Well, yes, correct things.
A lot of good points.
He's the best.
He does. The two main characters, Tom and Edith, like they're always the hardest to write, but you got to get that right. Yeah. And so I've written tons of scenes with them and gone back and been like, oh, that's totally wrong. The scene, yeah, there's so many, like the kiss, I think I wrote that like 10 different ways, 10 different times. And every time I did, I was like, this is salacious, or this is teenagey, or this is goofy, or this is, it's too much, or it's too little, you know, it's just getting it right. But it always just felt untrue to the characters. And the same goes with, especially like all their later interactions. Like my goodness, like you have to get that right, because if it's not right, then the whole story is dumb. So at least that's how I think of it. So yeah, the Edith Tom sections are the hardest to write. I guess I just feel like so determined to do right by them, and then like everyone else just kind of shows up and talks, which is great.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think we're coming to kind of the end of the books, the first three books talk. I think we have a couple other questions after that. Unless do you guys have anything else that you want to ask about the Books of Babel up through book 3? After Fall of Babel comes out, I would love to have a longer discussion about Luke Marat, because man, that's a character. That is a character.
Nice guy.
What a douchebag. What a douchebag. That's all I've got to say about freaking Luke Marat.
It's a Ferris Mason.
But an excellent antagonist. Just excellent character in Marat as well. So you guys, either any of you three guys have any Evie, go.
Well, not really a question. I just want to talk about it and potentially cry. So just fair warning.
Oh, is this the Edith moment?
Who, what?
Is this the Edith moment?
Yes. So kind of tying it to Byron, I felt like Byron and Edith were mirrors of each other, where Byron is this deer that is made into this conscious man-like creature, and Edith, she gets her arm, and her whole identity starts forming around the arm. And the conversation that Byron and Edith have about, you know, about the limb and what that means, and especially the conversation right before that Edith has with Haste about, well, how did you lose your arm? Oh, an infection. How'd you lose your chest on an explosion? And especially in the Hodkin, Edith has this incredible struggle with her identity, specifically and tangibly tied to her arm. And when she willingly and with no question takes off her arm to save the Hod in the on the balloon thing, I don't know why, but that broke me. And that, I think that absolutely encompasses her character and shows that the tower doesn't have her, that she hasn't succumbed to the tower, or she hasn't, I don't know, contributed to any sort of negativity, or I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, but she's a good person. She's a good, her mind and her heart is in the right place, and that just broke me.
Yeah.
Even worse than Ferdinand. So
I really appreciate that. I really do, and I'm glad that that's like how you like experienced her, because like that's how I've experienced her as well. I mean, that's in many ways I think she's the best person in the tower. So that's great to hear.
I felt profound sadness shortly before that, Evie, where, because again, I mean, you're like exactly what you said. She's starting to identify, like she is the arm of the Sphinx. That's what she is, right? And so she finally finds someone who understands in Wakeman Georgina. She's finally got a friend. She finally has someone who can understand what she's going through. And Georgina is a bloody freaking Marat sympathizer. And Christina and I were both, when Christina read it, I was waiting for her to get to it because I knew Christina does not like it when people lose friends and it's, I just felt this profound sadness because
Edith deserves everything good in life.
I know. And she's had a friend, and then she has to kill her friend.
But is your friend really a friend when they're being deceptive?
I mean, no, but she thought she had a friend because Josiah Bancroft is cruel to us. He loves for us to. Josiah Bancroft is the human equivalent of the tower and wishes us to feel sadness and
the only reason he said yes to doing this was so that he could see us being paid.
So he could see our misery.
Do enjoy the tears.
It was.
It's so funny. It's like I personally I felt anguish over these decisions and such like turmoil. I felt kind of hurt, and then I pour all that in there. I'm like, is this stupid? And so it's actually really like affirming to hear that there are people like you who felt as attached to these terrible turns, these crises, these disappointments as I was, because it wasn't, I think especially on Twitter and the social media, it's easy to kind of present yourself as sort of a laughing masochist, someone who enjoys, tormenting other people, or sadist, I mean. And I just, none of that was done lightly. I do think it's part of the inherent quality of the story. But I was sad, I was really frustrated with like some of these turns. It's good to know that I'm not alone.
I felt many things reading these books, and it's just good stuff. I know all of us did here. Does anyone else have anything they want to ask about first three books of Babel or concerning the books of Babel before we ask some non-Babel questions? All right, okay. Well, let's transition a little bit. I know Evie is dying to ask a non-Babel question concerning the all-time #1 hit singles of the illustrious band. Evie?
When are you getting the band back together and gonna release another Dirt LP? That's my most important question.
I knew there had to be a fan out there somewhere. I didn't know I was gonna meet her tonight.
Chase is now one too. So.
Chase and Evie were listening to it before the stream.
Oh, that is
Pre-game, baby.
So funny. Yeah. So the drummer moved to New Zealand, and that's sort of it. You know, I'm still married to the keyboardist. The guitarist Will, I see him every week. So we have 3/4 of the band together. But drummers are hard to. You have to lure them in with food, and like some petting and some compliments. But as soon as they wander away, they're gone. They're gone. They're gone to New Zealand, and you never see them again. So I don't know.
Hey, bass can be a good substitute for drums. I am married to a bassist, so.
Are you? Can he actually play bass? Because I can't. I'm paltry at the bass. Like my thing is I like to stand in front of other people and look around. That's what I do. And sing, but that's it.
Yeah, he
plays
does
the
like
bass?
mostly jazz bass, so.
Oh, a musician. An actual musician, I see.
But he also does
no
like
theory and things.
His favorite band is Rush, if that's any indication of like the type of bass he likes.
Yeah.
So
That's wonderful. Yeah. No, we could use them. We need a bassist too and a drummer. So, can you play drums?
I will try. I will learn.
Okay. See, there we go. We're back together.
There you go.
We'll reform.
Josiah, my wife just got home and would like to say hello, if that is acceptable.
Sure, of course.
She's just say hi. It's fine.
Hello. How are you?
You're like we were 2 hours ago at the start of the stream.
I just got out of work and I love your books. Also, this is our cat. She's very noisy when I get home. I'm holding her to keep her quiet.
She's very sweet.
He is so nice. He's the
Yay!
nicest person ever. Seriously.
So I've heard. I haven't actually interacted with you all. I don't have a Twitter. But I love your books.
Good for you. Oh, thank you.
That's definitely true.
So I'm going to be in the background. Y'all carry on. I will be eavesdropping.
Yeah, she's
That's
a huge
great.
fan. She wanted to say hello.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
What do you read fantasy on the regular? Like, is that what you reach for when you read yourself, or do you read more of the like literary fiction stuff?
I mean, I think legally I have to say yes. I read a lot of fantasy. Like then maybe contractually, I'm not sure. So the truth is not a lot. I just read whatever appeals to me. So I still read a lot of poetry. Like right now, I'm reading Voltaire because I just want to show off. Like I want people to know that I'm reading them. Yeah, I thought that people didn't think I was better than them, so I started reading that. I just like read some random article and they're like, have you read this? I was like, maybe in high school or grad school, but I don't remember it, so I'll read it again. And recently I was reading Ursula Gwynn and Connie Willis and really enjoying both of them. I do still read fantasy, but I think it's obvious from my work that I just sort of I stray and dabble and put my finger in a lot of different genres. So
I got you.
I have a question for you that I just now thought of.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I have a couple questions. They're all like poetry related, just because it's so awesome to me that you also have written poetry, and it doesn't even seem like
not good.
Oh, well,
poetry, just poetry.
Some is better than none. So I mean, no, but like, who are some of your inspirations, like poetry wise? Who are some of the poets that you
That's a good question.
really listen to? Because
of course Keats. I'm definitely somebody who more enjoys the sort of 20th century poets. So Auden and Jarrell and Moore and oh my God, like I could like talk about poetry all day because when I first started reading, I think when I was like 12 or 13, my dad gave me Lawrence Ferlinghetty's the Coney Island of the Mind, which is like I think the best-selling poetry collection in the history of the U.S. because it was like the beatniks and I read that and I was like, wow, I am going to totally do this for the rest of my life. And so, you know, I started the beatniks. I kind of moved to the modernists. Of course, Senlin Sins is based off the Conrad Aiken poem, Morning Song of Senlin, which if you haven't read Conrad Aiken, first poet laureate of the United States before they called it a poet laureate, I think it was a poet consulate or consular, I can't remember. His work also inspired Lingle's Swiftly Tilting Planets. So you'll read that poem, you're like, there's two titles from fantasy books in this one poem. Yeah.
I just looked up that poem. I didn't know there's a poem called that.
I did not either.
Yeah. And it has like the phrase "Senlin Sins" in it. I mean, like it's
What?
I stole it all. I just went and I just read a lot of books. And I stole it. That's the secret, kids. Be a thief.
Oh my gosh! Thank you for telling us that. I did not know that. That is awesome.
It is an open secret. No.
Related poetry question. Sorry, Chase. It's just eating me inside. How do you feel about E.E. Cummings and his lack of punctuation?
No, sorry.
I taught E.E. Cummings. I actually love E.E. Cummings. I have this complete collection on my shelf up here. You can see it? It's up here. E.E. Cummings. I have some of his illustrated works as well. And, oh yeah. No,
is there a red wheelbarrow in it with a white chicken?
That's not Cummings. You think of Carlos Williams. William Carlos Williams is the red wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
But I like all of them. I mean, I taught it. I like it. I read it. I still read it. I like it. I mean, this is an embarrassing thing. It's like talking about like your favorite mole at a cocktail party. Like, this mole? This is my favorite mole. It has three hairs.
This is premium YouTube content. This is what we're here for.
See, I'm sorry. I never get to talk to anybody about poetry anymore, especially like on BookTube. So it's just so cool. Sylvia Plath is one of my favorites, if that tells you anything about me.
Marvelous. Yeah, absolutely.
I love W.S. Merwin, and it was actually his birthday today. So
was it really? That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I love Merwin.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's
Greg.
I
Are you
love
a
Billy
reader?
Collins too.
No, unfortunately.
Greg and I. I was just want to make sure it wasn't just me. Like Greg and I'm so sorry. Like your writing is fantastic, but I just. Like in one of my recent videos, it's like, do you read poetry? And I said, not if I can help it. And I feel so bad now. Like I'm so ashamed that I said that.
No. I think that there was a generation of teachers who ruined poetry for readers. And I think it's awful. It's so sad. You know, so I whenever I meet someone who's like, I don't like poetry, I think like, probably they had teachers who did you a horrible disservice.
Yeah,
like forcing people to read it as a punishment in like high school, that'll do it. That'll ruin it for you.
Yeah, I've talked more than one time on my channel about how it's not just poetry. We ruin reading for kids because we won't let them read. We act like there's no value in them reading something that they would enjoy, and say that only these texts have any kind of academic value from them. You can't learn anything from this and that. And I know my kids, students I teach. When they pull out a book, I'm always like, what are you reading? And even if it's not something, because a lot of times it's like stuff I would never read. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, that's awesome that you're reading it. Because so many kids are like, I hate reading. I'm not going to read because they don't want to read Dickens' Oliver Twist with that inexcusable first sentence.
Right. And be shamed for it. I mean, when I was like working at the community college, like, I mean, the thing I always told my students is like, I don't care what you read. It doesn't matter if it's anime, manga, comic books, magazines, whatever it is, we just want to get the words into the eye holes and kind of keep doing that. And then, I think the thing that's like fun about reading is as you do it more, you kind of get curious about other things. And so, I think snobbery surrounding literature is toxic and awful. And it's honestly mostly because the people who are teaching it was like, I had to read this, and so you should too.
Yeah,
it's a terrible reason to make people read things. Like, I suffered once when I was 16. And so I'd like to see you suffer too. That's not good.
It's like, oh, clearly I am so smart because I read this one text from 1867. Like, you know.
Academia being used as a sword to make other people feel small is one of my personal pet peeves. It's just, I don't like it at all.
It's awful. Well, and it's particularly like problematic because you've just spoiled this person for like curiosity and wonder and learning and like self-education and all these things just so you could feel good about yourself in front of a classroom for 30 minutes. I mean, that's pretty inexcusable, I think. Yeah, I'm not a fan.
You're my new favorite person.
I can talk about teaching philosophy for a long time.
Oh my gosh, Mike. Oh my gosh, me too. I talk about it way too much already. I would be remiss if I did not use this opportunity to highlight that you have recently turned in it's your first draft, right, of your new WIP, right? Your new work in progress.
No, goodness. Well, I signed a contract.
I thought you were turning your first draft. Whoops. I'm ahead.
No. Like it's due in November of 22, so next year.
It's gonna be.
I'm 200 pages into this sucker, so I feel like it's coming together. I want it to be lighter and more accessible. No, I don't know what I'm doing. Like halfway through the draft, like I anything I say is just like garbage lies. It's gonna happen. It's due next year. We'll see.
Can you tell us anything?
But it's in the contract.
Gotcha.
Well, I mean, it's going to be a little different. I wanted to try my hand at sort of like a fantasy urban mystery because I don't know what those things mean separately. Those words, don't know what they mean. You put them all together, don't know what they mean. So I just want to like see if I could do that. I sent like the first 100 pages to my agent. He's like, "Okay, buddy," and so we'll see.
Is there anything that you've read while writing, whether it was the Books of Babel or the work you're working on now? Is there anything that you've read that's kind of unconsciously or consciously influenced your writing while you've been in the midst of it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think all of it will sound like some sort of snobby brag because it's all like desiccated, dry, old stuff. I haven't been reading a lot of contemporary stuff recently, and that is to my shame and detriment as a human being. I do not feel good about that, but it's the truth. And so, like, I was writing The Han King, and I discovered Gogol's Dead Souls. And if you read Dead Souls and then read Han King, like, oh yeah, I see where he found it. There's this like, he thought he was me Gogol for a bit, and I'm not. So it's that kind of stuff. And so, but Connie Willis's recent books is absolutely informing what I'm working on now because she is filled with wit and elocution and charm in a way that I admire and envy. And so, I mean, Connie Willis, am I saying her name right? I put her.
Doomsday Book.
Say nothing of the dog. Yeah. Just, I mean, so I'm sort of when I read a book, it becomes the most important thing to me in the world, and then I write everything like that until I read another book, which is fortunate that I only read 2 books a year. Keep it together, you know. But Mervyn Peake was another one that like I read while I was writing The Fall of Babel, and I was like, oh crap, I didn't know I could write this well. I need to start over, but couldn't do it. Couldn't start over, so I just keep chugging along, just putting down the adverbs.
I'm starting the Gorman Goss trilogy in the new year, so I'm very excited.
I have not finished it yet, but maybe we can enjoy that journey together.
It's been my white whale book, Titus Grown. I've started it so many times and put it down by no fault of its own. Yeah, it's another very like lyrical book, and another book that the castle is like its own character. So just like the tower is. So
I had the same experience, and what helped me is somebody said like read Mr. Pye first, Pye by Mervyn Peake. It's a short novella, like 120 pages. Same sort of like beautiful prose. Feels more like C.S. Lewis. It's sort of like obviously allegorical, but human and fun and short. And so to get me into Gorman Gas, I read that and might work.
Oh, nice. Okay, I will do that.
Well, guys, do you guys have any other questions you want to ask of Josiah, who has generously donated his time to sit and literally just listen to us tell him how much we like the Books of Babel?
We could do this anytime.
I mean, I could ask another question that's a subtle bite to Alan, but you know.
Oh, then definitely do it.
What I do.
So what are your thoughts on Samwise Gamgee?
Oh,
What, you don't like Samwise Gamgee? What's the dig here?
that is something that came out. It has spiraled beyond my control now. I'm no longer in control of it. I was filming a video with my wife, and it says, "Do you have any like hot takes on like books? Like what's an unpopular opinion you have?" I'm like, I don't like hobbits, especially Samwise, because he just says, "Mr. Frodo, Mr. Frodo."
What? Oh no! Oh no! Oh.
I filmed an apology video.
That's what I.
Well,
I filmed an apology video. I said I was sorry.
well, it was nice talking to the rest of you. No. I do understand. I remember the first time I read The Lord of the Rings, and I was at some point a little bit like a little less of this guy. But honestly, I think if there was a person on that adventure, that would be me. That'd be Samwise.
Mr. Frodo. I was in middle school. I haven't read them since middle school, so I'm really. It's all a complete like. I've just been like it's just an unpopular opinion that I've just kind of leaned into, remembering from 20 years ago.
You learned the important lesson of the internet, which is don't have a hot take unless you can stand the heat.
Exactly.
And that's why people are like, what do you like with this being published right now? I'm like, well, I'm getting around to the Bible soon. Hear good things. Like, I'm not doing any hot takes. Like,
Yeah.
I do not touch it. Not gonna.
Yeah.
I which is so crazy because I depend upon booktubers, book reviewers to flog my books, and people ask me what I'm reading right now. And it's like, oh my god, I sometimes just miss having private thoughts about works. You know what I mean? Just reading a book and be like, I didn't care for that. Should I tell anyone? No.
Yeah.
Sit with it.
Yeah, it's absolutely hard. Like I don't like not liking things. It's just
Right?
but not
that's
liking.
like the internet's jam.
I know. It's super easy to lean to like go negative because the problem is people say they don't like I don't want like we don't want in political campaigns. We don't want negative ads. Like we want everybody except that's not true. It works. And negative stuff, a rant review will get 3, 4, 5 times as many views as a positive one. It's just it's the internet, like you said.
So if that's what you have to do to get some more readers for Senlin, like go take it down.
We'll trash other stuff so that they'll watch. We'll trash other stuff, and then at the end say, you know what didn't suck? Senlin a fan, and then get them to watch.
I was going to say, to turn it back around to the books, I think that's a really good summation of the Books of Babel, at least obviously up to the Hodkin at this point, is that there's so much negativity. Yeah. And it's easy to succumb to that, but strive for something a little bit better.
That's right. Aspire to better.
Yeah. Josiah, thank you so much for the time that you've set aside to talk to us. I know that all joking aside, we appreciate it so much. These books have meant so much to me personally. I think everybody here is just a huge #Senlin superfan. I know will continue. We will street team anything that you put out. You just let it go,
so wonderful,
and we will put it on blast. And
it's going to become a walking neon sign. Read Josiah Bancroft's books, people.
You guys are just so wonderful. Thank you so much. You guys are, keeping the lights on and letting me do this. I can't continue to write stories without readers like you. So thank you so much. Thank you for all the wonderful things you've said, and thank you for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it.
I will personally rebuild the Tower of Babel so that people will read it. That's what I will do.
And we're going to keep pushing out the hashtag Senlin Superfans and getting people to read it. And then if you ever, release in novellas from the Babel universe, we will push those. And when Hexologists or whatever its final title is, we'll push that out too. Like we'll get, we
will be crumb pushers for you.
That's all I ever wanted when I was a teacher in school. Kids become pushers.
That's right. I think we can all safely say that you are an auto-buy author for us. That no matter what you release, we will absolutely put it out and try to get the word out. Thank you so much for spending this time and for writing these wonderfully just special books. It's been absolutely a pleasure you joining us and us getting to talk to you. So thank you again. Thanks again for hanging out with us.
Thank you.
Everyone who's watching, if you do not follow Josiah Bancroft on Twitter, follow him on Twitter. He has a wonderful YouTube channel where he makes amazing pitches for Senlin Ascends. It's absolutely awesome. That pitch are you kidding? That's the best pitch for Books of Babel I've ever seen in my life. And please, if you haven't given the Books of Babel a chance, please read Senlin Ascends. If you have and you have not pre-ordered Books of Babel, Fall of Babel, please pre-order Fall of Babel. It comes out in November. Is it 6th? It's the beginning of the month, right? November 6th.
9th in the US, 11th in UK.
Gotcha. Absolutely awesome. I know mine's on pre-order. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. So thank you guys. If you're not following Chase and Evie and Greg, you absolutely should. And stay tuned for more premium Senlin content. And I hope, Josiah, that I hope you'll come and talk to us again at some point. This has been an absolute pleasure. So
will do. Absolutely.
All right. Good night, everybody. I'm going to end the broadcast here.